The pin game is once again strong. Hello there, I'm Greg and I'm making the Brain of Morbius inspired by Doctor Who. Doctor Who, you may have heard, is 60 years old this month. I'm just old enough that I was a fan back in the day. It was initially cancelled when I was 8. I'm a McCoy kid. Curse of Fenric and Greatest Show in the Galaxy are the two incidents that I was possibly most scared in my childhood. They really scarred me, and I love those stories now. Scarred for life and love in it. There are many props you could make. You could make his digital pocket watch. You could make her cool alien ghetto blaster both from Silver Nemesis. You could make the multicoloured guns from Happiness Patrol. You could make the glowing flask from the Curse of Fenric. I had to think across all of time and space, and really, looking at it subjectively, Tom Baker, I don't know. All of Classic Who has recently landed on BBC iPlayer, and I really recommend this era of Tom Baker with Liz Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Pyramids of Mars, Brain of Morbius, Talons of Weng-Chiang. It's all gothic horror homage, and I recommend it.
My brain functions perfectly.
Doubt it, Morbius. All that time in the tank, it's gone soft.
Just a few little technical struggles with this build, so much so that this is the first episode that has its own title. So if you want to miss out all the struggles and false starts, I suggest that you skip to 4 minutes and 49 seconds when the build actually begins. But other than that, enjoy. So here we have a box of potential. Is it a box of delights? Let's find out. A giant blue raspberry. Ring light that can be various different colours. Packaging from a frittata. This is the back of a clock that my mum gave me. Foil cake bases, which actually have a little flowery pattern all over them, although they're quite good for Blade Runner style lighting effects. Anyway, it's a 4-tier macaron tower, for when 3 tiers of macarons just aren't enough. Brain moulds. We got this one from Wilko, probably the last time I'll ever go into Wilko's, and something had burst all over it, but I got 3, which is more than I could possibly need. This is an LED flame effect flickering LED light. This is a sort of bioelectrical umbilical cord that I made. It's actually washing line wrapped in fishing line and then covered multiple times in PVA glue. Not the material I would use now because I've learnt so much. Drinks dispenser. Summer living drink dispenser. How will those lemons come off? That's the thing I'm most apprehensive about. But my plan is to use this. This is a piece of curly wire that I found on the ground, and then I remembered you could get these key rings. I mean, it's too short, isn't it? I do have a bag of old wires, so I think my coiled wire will be something I make myself. Tubing for a fish tank. Film reels I got from scrap in Farsley. Plastic out of old CD spindles. This is the top for a paintbrush. Pot. Offcuts, or just cuts, maybe they're the main cuts, of clear Perspex. And finally, quite hard to find this, it is a bayonet-headed lamp. Because the bulb isn't a little mini screw-in one, it's a clunk-turn bayonet one. One last thing I forgot to mention, this is the front of the clock that my mum gave me. Yes, it would make an excellent Crichton tummy, but it may be a brain lid. Or it may not. Let's find out together. First thing to do is strip down this lamp. Black and white. Black and white signifies a false start, false hope, a dead end. So I'm dismantling this lamp I've had for ages, using up all my nice black electrical tape to fix it, took the plug off, pulled the wire out, put the plug back on, test that the bulb still works, yes. Then 5 minutes later, test that the bulb still works, no. Do you know what, I've decided against this bulb. I think the lamp still works, but the bulb... Anyway, let's use a different lamp. This is ceramic, so I get to smash that with a hammer, which I'm feeling therapeutically in need of. So I'm now just going to pop online and buy a small thread screw, because I do want the light to pulse. But yeah, lamp 2. Lamp 2. Here we go. Let's start. Let's make a start on the project. Tell you what, change of plan again. I'm going to hop online, find out that you can't get any E14 sized flame effect bulbs delivered by tomorrow, and then just pop out in the rain, go to the local charity shops and buy a lamp. When life's going well, buy a lamp. When everything's gone wrong, buy a lamp. So now I can go online and buy some bulbs, which will be delivered tomorrow. One thing I did get was a corporate item. I think it's for siphoning petrol or something, but as you can clearly see there, it is a corporate item. This lamp is better than the other one in that the switch is on the wire, but rather than the neck. But because the switch is on the wire, you now can't pull it through. So taking the plug off now isn't a solution. So I sit and think for a bit. I think slowly, but I act swiftly. You can get specific wire stripping tools that just pull the rubber or plastic sleeve off the wire, but I'm just using my snippers very carefully to remove the black bit and then the brown and blue to get the exposed wiring underneath, which I will now connect. Okay. Don't know much about circuit boards, dum dum dum. But I do know if I wind all these coppery bits together, brown to brown and blue to blue, and then wrap each one in separate bits of electrical tape, this bulb, which I've sourced from a lamp downstairs, will work. Fate has forced my hand and I've learned how to do some electrocraft. Yeah. Okay. Professional job. Hey! I mean, I know any electricians watching won't be like giving me a standing ovation for that, or throwing roses at the screen, but that's my first ever bit of wiring. And it's alive. He got cocky. He got pleased with himself, and the fates heard him. The nail varnish remover sort of faded the lemons, but left this indelible lemon shape all over the jar. So as I was buying some bulbs, I thought, let's buy some more drinks dispensers as well. Couldn't buy one, had to buy two. So this is now the next day, and they arrived along with the bulbs. Back on track. These are the plastic film reels. What I'm making here is a light diffusing base to sit on top of the ring light. So I'm sanding the clearer one with some wire wool to make it more opaque. I'm adding this opaque plastic one, and I'm also adding a circle of tracing paper, which is a very good diffuser, as you can see. Only use karate if you're fully trained like me. It's actually Krav Maga I was using there. Is there chopping in Krav Maga? I don't know. So yeah, the jar is nice thin plastic, so I just cut that with a craft knife. Still had to remove the plug because the switch, but not the plug, fits through the hole in the middle of the base. So plug off, line through, plug back on. There was also another dead end you may have just seen in the background there. There was a brief moment where it had a sort of thin Perspex neck to mount the light on. But because the jar is really quite squat, it didn't need a neck. So it's sort of a, I appreciate that it's a little chunky kind of Funko Pop proportioned Brain of Morbius. So here, because the light just sits directly into the base on the light fixture and doesn't have a neck, I'm sticking these little domed rubber feet onto the ring light just to raise it up that little bit more. Now plug back on, and there, that's our lighting. That's what we've been, for 2.5 days, that's what we've been working towards. Looks cool. So this is kind of interesting, I think. I took this off, and because the lights are all around the outside of a tube, there were no upward facing lights. So I thought, because I want it to light a dome shape, I would just fold it back slightly and try and round it out without breaking it, although I've got 3 more, so, you know, let's go for it. But an interesting thing has happened. These bulbs have a gravity detecting mode, because they're meant to look like a flame. So normally when it's this way up, the bottom would be lit, and then higher up towards the top of the tube it would flicker. But I noticed as I was folding this back that these top ones started staying permanently lit, and these at the bottom now only slightly flicker. This bulb now thinks it's upside down. By sheer fluke, by folding this back and sort of tucking it in and wrapping it in clear parcel tape, it thinks it's upside down, which is better for me because it means that there's more constant light at the top. So everything's coming up Millhouse. Detailing your brainstem. So I'm just using some cheap cardboard tube. This is just kitchen roll rubbishy tube, but I've wrapped it around with some brown paper tape and then detailed it with vertically crinkled brown paper tape to get some sort of, not that it's a neck, but some lines, and then I'm drawing on some vertical veins or tendons just with clear hot glue, which will also be cut off and replaced with something else later. Speaking of cut off, this is the black cup bit off the bulb, the, what's that on a sword? The hilt. The ice cream cone bit that we don't need, so it just makes it wider than it needs to be. So I'm cutting it off with my Dremel, after making sure, of course, there are no wires going through that dome. It's just solid black plastic that doesn't have any electrical function. Cut, screwdriver, twist, pop. 40 a macaron tower display stand! So I'm just cutting out the riser from the centre of the largest of the layers, so that clear hoop will now be my lid fits quite nicely. And then to cover up that flat hole, I'm using, when I used to buy spindles of blank CDs and occasionally burn CDs or DVDs, you'd get that blank plastic disc, and I saved all those. Just sticking that on with some 5-minute epoxy. 5 minutes working time, but then set aside for half an hour. I didn't film myself doing that, probably because it's a bit messy and I was ashamed. So here, just to detail the base, I've cut out the centre of one of those film reels because I like these 6 spokes and I just think it looks good. I think time and again the formula for creative genius is proving itself to be 1% inspiration, 99% junk retention. Because the secret to my creative process is just never throwing anything away. It's time to decorate the brain stem. I think my mum's aunt, my great aunt, my grantie, passed away, and she had lots of fake flowers, and I said don't throw those away. This is about 20 years ago. So we used those flowers to decorate our wedding, which we had to cut down because we were putting them in tins. So we were left with a pile of fake flower stalks, and they're great. So I'm going to use them here as brain nodes, not nodes, fronds, frondicles. They're organic, they're posable, they're wire with texture on the outside. I guess I'm just feeling smug. He is smug, isn't he? What a smug noise! Also feeling smug that I saved these screw covers when I took down a shower cubicle in our bathroom. So I'm just using my flush snips to cut off the collar bit from the back so that they are flat. And I'm sticking them on. Everything's in 6s because of the spokes of this film reel. I know it's 8s on the TV prop. You don't have to write in. These are metal cocktail stirrers. I wanted a ball on the end of a metal thing to use as the front of a ray gun, but we'll come to that later, in a later video I mean. So I'm going to use those as the metal rods that connect together these vertical, I'm calling them the circuit boards, which I'm going to cut out of these strips of acrylic. Clear acrylic, Perspex, are they the same thing? Tape them together and then you get multiples that are the same size. Drilling all the way through. The first of 3 or 4 snapped drill bits. I think I did a swear there, but obviously cut it out because this is a family concern. So I've got these Perspex / clear acrylic buttons, don't really know what they're for, but I'm using them as spacers to set the 2 parts of the circuit board apart because those rods aren't holding them, so I wanted to put some filling in the sandwich. Then I'm cutting out the top of one of these brain jelly molds, and very simply, and it will definitely go really smoothly and work first time, I'm using my wife's heat gun to just fold it round into a nice round brain. Let's watch. Just going to do some vlogging while I wait for my brain to dry. Not dry, cool down. So, it's not a good brain, my brain. It's shoddy. I've gone through all 3 jelly molds. Basically, today has been beset by kind of disaster. I've already recorded the Doctor Who theme that you'll hear later. That was a joy. That was a wonderful couple of days. This brain is just going to have to be good enough. Often good enough isn't good enough, but on this occasion, I'm doing it to like, it needs to look good if it was on a shelf at a Halloween party levels of finish and quality. Because it's been a bit of a rough day. My wife is also currently downstairs, terribly ill. So it's a house of doom and tears today. But by using a heat gun and combining 3 of those jelly molds, and I've just detailed this side of it with hot glue, where I've just followed the pattern that was on the brain already with the worms of hot glue, and actually that looks quite nice. So I'm going to continue. I quite like the jar. I really love the music I've recorded, but I hate my brain. But it's fine because it doesn't matter. But thanks for watching. It doesn't matter in the positive sense, like, doesn't matter. Not, doesn't matter. Thank you for watching. It matters because I care about you and about making things. But back to the video. So these are curly wires. As I just said, it's kind of a little chunky, it's sort of mini Brain of Morbius. So some of my curly wires I already had were too heavy gauge. I wanted fine wire. So I've harvested more of this brown and blue wire from inside an old bit of flex, and I'm making it into coiled wire by wrapping it round a pen. Now, rather than attach these silver sockets, which are also part of the screw covers from our old shower cubicle, I've used them all now, so you'll never have to hear me talk about that old shower cubicle ever again. Rather than attaching them to the circuit board and then sticking the wire into the hole, I'm doing it the other way around, of attaching the sockets onto the end of the wires with hot glue, letting that set, and then once that's a single flush unit. I'm going to superglue that onto the circuit board. Another step backwards. The clear/white hot glue I'd used before, I actually cut off because I realised I wanted to prime the brain stem black. Then my old snippets and bits of fake flower stems and stalks I've also primed black, and I'm sticking them on with good old goth glue. So we have a base black layer in all those details to then brush a paler colour over the top to match the brain. Yeah, this is a system to make the brain removable. I could have just hot glued all this together, get it working for one video and then forget about it, but I am determined that all my batteries and bulbs will be replaceable. So I'm using, this is the plastic packaging from a big multi-pack of washi tape, multicoloured thin masking tape, and I've just cut it in half, put a slit in one side of it so I could tape it slightly tighter so that the other half fits over the top. So I'm essentially rebulbifying these LEDs into just a nice vertical column, and then this other half of the column now slides easily over the top. Rather like the central, it's TARDIS console-y, isn't it? Is that the time rotor bit that goes up and down? Always nice to use a big fat chunky drill bit, so put a big hole in the bottom of my brain. It's called trepanning, where you drill a hole in someone's head. Anyway, and then put that, I've thrown myself there, and then put that fitting cylinder inside so now it just fits easily on and off the light. So to make the brainstem colour match the brain colour, I've mixed up some very pale sort of skin tone beigey magnolia colour, but still leaving the black in all those recesses so it's highly detailed. And then I'm just dry brushing it onto the higher details, focusing on the bottom of the brain, because it's always a bit worrying to paint something that you want to glow, because obviously you could paint it and make it opaque and then you can't see the glow anymore. So I'm sort of blending the colour of the brainstem up into the, I would say, the bottom half of the brain, but making it a bit more fleshy coloured and realising it looks good. Good morning. We're commencing the greening. It's not going to be full of green liquid. How are we going to green liquefy it? The thing I really wanted to buy was some neon green vinyl, which would have to come from Germany and cost about 50 euros, and it was unorderable in the end. It just couldn't be got. Acquired is a nicer word. I couldn't acquire it. So I've bought this, my new favourite material. That was sarcasm. It's florist's cellophane. So if you get a nice bunch of flowers, it might be wrapped in very, very faint, barely green at all cellophane. So I might not use that. So I'm testing out other stuff on these offcuts from the jar. I found some clear green enamel paint from somewhere. The only fluoro thing I have are highlighter pens, rather than just the pure green on its own, which is, although that's gone very misty there. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Cursed. The Curse of Morbius. Update. My wife has provided this. It's not a bottle of ink anymore, because it's thousands of years old, but I've swirled a bit of water around to try and revivify it a bit. And now I'm mixing it into this 3D crystal lacquer, which is the stuff I glossed over the eyeballs in my last video with. So it's now green tinted crystal lacquer testing time, and we'll just see. I'm going to test it on this bit of... I want to sort of be able to see my brain. It's got that old warped glass kind of vibe. Oh no, maybe it's quite good. I have always wondered what like losing your mind might feel like. Alright mate, this is wild stuff. It's sawing a highlighter pen in half. It's not jumping out of a plane without a parachute, you know. It's a good source of fluoro ink. What you find inside is a plastic sleeve with an ink-soaked sponge inside it, and then put some gloves on and squeeze out all that Dayglow goodness. It's satisfying, it works, it was a good idea. So, fluoro ink, green printer's ink, and this 3D crystal lacquer, which, like PVA glue, is quite opaque and white. It dries clear, but you just have to have a bit of faith. Although I am testing it here by just rubbing it up the side of the cup to see if it's got legs, which is a red wine tasting term. I used to work in wine shops when I was a child. So now I've put masking tape around the inner top edge of the jar to set the surface layer, the meniscus, to set the meniscus of my liquid. New album. And I'm just painting the inside in green goo. Just to share with you some moments of positivity as well as crisis, I think this might look cool. It's running down, it's nicely tinted, it's Ghostbusters-y. I think squeezing the ink out of a highlighter pen was a bit of a stroke of genius. If there's a thing flashing on screen about how this was actually a very bad idea because using this combination of liquids, made my house burn down, or then we'll see. We'll see. And that, my friend, is the secret of the ooze. Secret of the ooze, what's that? Comment below. So this is a technique I've learnt from diorama makers. If you're making a pond or a lake or a miniature bit of water that you want to have lots of detail, you let your lacquer dry a little bit and then blow on it hard with a straw and you get quite realistic sort of ripples, and just something I wanted to try. Time to make a hose socket. These are little party toy trophies that Studson Studio uses. Very happy to have found some of those. This is the foot of an ottoman we bought, like a blanket box. We didn't like the chrome feet, but it's a nice black disc with a big long bolt that will hold the thing on, and then this is going to be the pump handle part of a big Super Soaker water pistol. So undo the screws, pop it off, screw it back together again, and I just thought these parts fit together to make a thing, which I thought was good at the time, but I actually cover in foam in a bit. Then finishing it off with a counter from the game Drafts, or indeed Checkers. Checkers! What we call drafts. They're checkers crazy across the pond. More 5-minute epoxy. I'm sponsored by this stuff. Mix it up. I'm going to put a blob of epoxy onto the end of each metal rod. That's your long-term plastic, really grippy, once it's dried for half an hour. But then I'm putting super glue onto the sockets because that's your quick bond. And using thin masking tape. I do recommend getting some thin masking tape. It's very useful to hold them on there while the epoxy sets. So set that to one side, and now I'm adding, I thought for some colour variation, if I just put the highlighter pen fluoro ink into some lacquer without any of the green ink, you'd get a slightly different tone. I'm very happy with the final thing, so there's probably some variation in there. It may be just that I was enjoying putting this stuff on, so I wanted to do it some more. So here I'm dripping and dropping it and just creating some yellow and green variety. Now, lots of Perspex or clear acrylic greeblies to make. These are the two handles that go on the top. Tape it together so you cut out two that are the same. Got to use this big drill bit for the first time. Will it cut through clear plastic? Tension moment. Yes, it will. What could possibly go wrong with this project, apart from all the things? So yeah, let's just get Dremel in and we'll be done in half an hour. My Dremel's died, and I'm sad and upset about it, because I had to finish this with hand tools and it felt like exercise. So ignoring that problem, let's go back to doing some more lacquering. Green ink, fluoro ink, because the first layer is dry. I realise the lid is now much darker green than the side, so I'm just putting on another layer, and that second layer is the real lumpy, slimy layer. So, right, let's face up to it. This has to be done by hand. I need 6 bits that go around the lid, and then 6 little triangles that go around the base, buttresses. The ones around the top, I think, have holes in them. So I thought, rather ingeniously, I used that to screw this, because it's very hard to cut a tiny bit of plastic without it moving all over the place. So I could screw the plastic into this bit of wood, and it was hurting my fingers to hold because the edges are sharp, and so I put a glove on. And I did this 12 times, then I reset the edges, so it was a lot of sawing, and I wish my Dremel wasn't dead. It's rough. Anyway, now I need to stick on the meniscus lid. The depth of it is exactly 1 Lego block plus a coaster, so I'm inverting the jar and using those as risers to put the lid in at the exact height of where that edge is, and then putting a lip or a rim of, again, 5-minute Gorilla Epoxy around the inside edge. And the reason I'm doing it on a photo frame is that so I can then set it in the sun to dry. Because epoxy is very strong if you don't touch it for about 40 minutes. Here's what the brain looks like. Obviously the brain, once the light is on, is much more orange than the stem. So I'm just using a mixture of, I think, burnt umber and a bit of raw sienna and orange to warm up the brain stem and the underside of the brain, just sort of blending it up. there's a side-by-side shot of before and after. They look like mushroom cloud explosions. Didn't spot that for quite a while. So because I had loads of time and just didn't want this project to end, I thought I'd noticed that the hose socket doesn't look enough like the one in the TV show, so I'm now re-detailing that with just self-adhesive EVA foam. I must make things out of foam more, because you can cut it with a knife. Rather like the tension in the room when my Dremel breaks. Using a circle of that self-adhesive foam to almost completely cover the logo, and then just drill a nice big hole through the middle. Can be messy because it's going to be covered up. So that bolt will now go all the way through the socket, which I'm doing we'll call a heavy dry brush. So not complete coverage, but a heavy dry brush of chrome paint. Then put the bolt all the way through, hold the nut on the inside and tighten the outside with a screwdriver. Very happy with that. So here, using Lego bricks again as risers, because the Perspex details around the top lip of the jar need to be set slightly down from the top because the lid overhangs. And I found out that that set down was the same as the width of a Lego brick. Make a red hose to the tune of Ride a White Swan by T-Rex. Again, a heavy dry brush, just slapping some red paint onto a corrugated or ribbed plastic tube. Speaking of tube, I realised there was an extra bit of socket that the red hose comes out of, so this is just a chunky marker pen lid, smoothed out the sides of it with some brown paper tape, and now I'm chroming it with this lovely aluminium foil tape, which you just smooth out and it sticks on very nicely, and it's a nice way of silvering something quickly. And then nearly finally, I realised there were some clear hoses and wires and stuff inside the jar. They're meant to come out through the side of the jar, but because I want it to be detachable, I've made a slight design tweak so they go out through the base, again into one of those screw covering sockets. Then for the two black things hanging down either side of the jar, which I decided were maybe speakers or something, I thought Lego bricks. So I cut the nubbins off these two Lego bricks using my flush snips. Super glue either side, brown paper tape so you get a nice solid black brick, little eyelets in the top because that's screen accurate, and then cover them in flat black enamel paint. Then get up at 6 the next morning, look again at your references to see where they hang, and realise that the things in the show are very clearly cylinders. They're not square. I think they're probably weights which hold the lid on or stop the prop from shaking or something. So this is a bit of ribbed black tubing. It might be a pen lid, I don't know. Then right at the end, I'd put this out, set it up ready to do my finished thing shots, and realised it would be nice if there was a chrome band, like a skirt, around the ring light. So I took it back to the workshop desk, and this is a strip of cardboard, and then just covered it again in that lovely foil tape. It's one of many tapes I recommend. And there, the quest is over, the epic has ended, and we may rest. So before we see the finished thing, if you've enjoyed this video, which of course you have, then why not support me on Patreon to keep it going, especially as I keep destroying drinks dispensers and having to buy new ones. Or you could buy me a coffee on Ko-Fi, or you could just help me out by liking, sharing, or subscribing to this channel. Speaking of channels, this week's channel recommendation is Epic Upcycling. He makes amazing furniture out of scrap wood and scrap metal, never speaks, there's hardly even music, really chill, but you learn a lot about woodworking watching him. Now, with the Doctor Who theme also performed by me, let's take a look at the finished thing. And very happy I am with it too. As this has now become the customary plug section of the video where I just mention things that might be relevant. Firstly, there are Red Dwarf frames and the Puffets ornaments for sale on my Etsy, so please have a look at those. I am in a few big finish Doctor Who adventures. Very small acting parts. There was one that I went to London for, another was just recorded remotely, but I've got to star in things with Colin Baker and Christopher Eccleston and Alice Krieger, the Borg Queen, and it's kind of unreal. So yeah, give him a listen. I really recommend Big Finish, particularly if Paul McGann is actually coming back in his own series, as is currently scuttling around a rumour, because he's really great. but so are Christopher Eccleston and Colin Baker and Peter Davison, who I've worked with. All of them. Wild. I've also worked with Nicola Bryant, who played Perry alongside Colin Baker in The Wilds, my short film. So, yes, it's been a Doctor Who kind of life, and lots of dreams have come true, which is amazing. Speaking of dreams come true, thank you as always to my patrons. Very warm welcome aboard to a couple of new patrons. Thank you to anyone who may have raised their pledge. That's amazing of you. Yeah. Can't get the tone of this right. So thanks very much to them. Thanks to you for watching. Lots and lots of love from me, and I'll see you again soon. Is that what a TV presenter would do? I'll see you again soonish. Don't look at me. Goodbye. Also, speaking of the Curse of Morbius, I hope this isn't TMI, but I had to reshoot all my picture-in-picture bits because I forgot to refocus the camera after doing the close-up of this pin. So I think the curse might be stress. Or just being an idiot.